Welcome, people of the World Wide Web. So this is Chris from Cypher Sigma Screen Time, and as the title would show, yes, this is Superman, the first Superman movie that tried to do something different. Now, need to clear a few things up. First, some people are probably not going to be happy with my views and thoughts on this. This video is not me here to say this is the most amazing Superman movie ever. It's not. I know it has its flaws. It's not a car park, and by that I mean a car park has a lot of flaws. This has some, in my opinions. I still think this is a good movie. I think it gets a bashing, and sometimes bashing for not necessarily needing the reasons why. And because of this, and because of who I am as a movie person, I will watch anything and everything. But I'm also a person, as I've grown up, I have instances in my life where you do not disagree with people. You know, you disagree with people. Even people do annoy you for certain reasons, but I have developed along my way, even movies, I will stop, I will listen to that person's opinion, I will take it into account, and I will take it on board. It's not to say that I will then agree with what they say. I will could still disagree with them, but I always like that conversation of why and the understanding of other people's opinions. Now with this, it was very much, people were quite, I felt, not harsh, maybe harsh. There are certain reasons that I came across that people specifically felt like this. So I watched a lot of reviews online. I then went online and watched more reviews, looked at reviews on IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes. What I did do is then put into Google, and it's funny enough, of when you start putting into Google, like, why was this movie so harshly reviewed? Before you even get to type Superman in, this is the first movie that comes up. I think I did have 2025 in it. So, but there is obviously a lot of Google searches of this. Why were there reasons? So, so what I did is I then went into more facts and figures, found out why people were saying what they were saying, what their reasons were, looked online, looked on other stuff, pulled out facts. And this is the reason for this video. As I say, this is not me saying this is the most amazing movie ever. This is me finding why people do not like this movie, looking at their reasons, comparing their reasons to statistics and facts. As I say, this is not a whole video of me going, this is it, and I've made this all up. This is all me, gone online, gone on Rotten Tomatoes, gone on IMDb, got facts, got figures, and compare what people are saying to what I see. And obviously some of it is my seeing, it is my interpretation of it. So there is a little bit of leeway, and I will go through that. I will cover it as much as I can within this video. And I will explain why I feel it's different, and the understanding of this. So there we have that. I have a massive sheet of writing, so I'm just trying to find, yeah. So first off, obviously, we will give a list of why, the reasons. So first off, there was profit. Everybody was saying the profit wasn't good. It wasn't good comparable to Man of Steel, as now then everybody trying to bring the Snyderverse up and stuff. So that's probably another thing. So this video is about Superman movies. So this will cover the original Superman, Superman 2. I've kind of merged Superman 2 and the Richard Donner cut together. It is what it is. Superman 3, Superman 4, Superman Returns, Man of Steel, and this Superman, because these are movies that essentially the main character is Superman. Superman and Batman, it's got Batman in there, it's got Diana in there, it's got a lot of other movies in there, plus the fact this is a continuation of Man of Steel and an extension of this movie, whereas this latest one only it's its first outing. Yes, I'm using the original movies, but they weren't world building, if you get what I mean. Because I'm not using Batman vs Superman, the Snyder Cut or the Justice League, they are not used in there. Again, they are later movies in a movie continuation, and with like the Snyder Cut, there's a lot of hindsight and stuff like this. You can't compare those movies with this movie, and you'll understand why I say that reasoning, because there are a lot of other factors to consider. Again, if I was to count every interpretation of Superman, I could bring TV series into it. I'm not going to bring that. If I'm talking about Superman, I'd bring Black Adam into it. He was at the end of it. That wasn't a great movie. It's going to bring the character down. People will be upset with that. I'm not going to do that. So it's 7 movies essentially. That is my broad line, because these are movies about Superman. Pure and simple. Obviously, this is opening a universe. It has small characters, but Superman is front and center. He takes most of the story. And there will be I won't compare too much to Clark Kent as well, because in the new one, his Clark Kent isn't even on screen for 5 minutes. There's not enough of that character to compare to 4 movies or 2 other movies where he's on screen a lot more as Clark Kent. Just saying. So those are on. So yeah, so we'll get. So those are the kind of the prerequisites. Apologies, as I say, trying to be as clear as I can with this. But yeah, so essentially the points that came up were profit. People like, was the profit good? Was the profit bad? There was this market. There was this figure. There was this figure. They compared against this. They compared against that. I will go into that and give you an overall of that and just go. Biologically perfect was one. So basically, people were not happy with a realistic portrayal. The fact that Superman got beat up very early on with this. There were political points that they felt in the new movie that people didn't like it. As I say, this is more based on this and then going back to compare to other movies. And basically his invulnerability, that he wasn't invulnerable as he kind of is portrayed in the previous movies or in the comics or whatever. So that is first one. See, profit, their financial performance overall was that woke. So this is essentially that if you get, and these are all off Google, these are not coming from me. So essentially a lot of people were unhappy with the fact that James Gunn's Superman was portrayed as an immigrant, which I find quite hilarious, and the fact he had human kindness. That the fact Google spurts that out because people have put this, I find really silly, because if anybody knows the whole emphasis of what Superman stands for, there it is. There was backlash over the fact that this was a recasting of Henry Cavill, so the fact that there was too close of a universe and that a different actor was chosen. There is a mention of the film not being very perfect in the fact that this Superman cares for animals, and the fact there is a scene where he saves a squirrel and stuff, and there is obviously crypto quite forward. The fact of these animal interactions and stuff and aspects, people were not happy about. So that is essentially what people hate about this movie. So thank you if you've stayed along for this, learn for the movie so far. If you're new to the channel, please do click that subscribe button. I will throw that in there. So first off, we will go into profit. I will try and handle these as best as possible, and I will try and bring these up. So people say that, you know, Superman Legacy wasn't profit. It didn't make as much money and stuff like this. Now, first of all, if you want to take a step back, all of these movies came out in different times. So you had the late 70s to early 80s. You had the first movie. You had 2009. You had 2013. And then you had 2025. Now, streaming only started to become a thing in 2013 when Man of Steel was out. That's when Netflix were more focused towards their online platform. COVID hadn't happened and the cinema wasn't in the state it was. So if you're going to start going, there is this and you price comparison to this and that, you have to consider those, because you can't go, well, Superman 2 is amazing, but there was no streaming. There was no, you know, you have to understand that you take the movie. But if you're going to go, well, this movie is shit, it goes, well, it went to streaming in like 4 months after it was done. You know, there was streaming because none of the other Superman movies have ever had the streaming aspect of it. So it's like, it's a bit unfair to just compare the one movie that had it. Obviously, COVID has reduced the amount of people because obviously, you know, none of these were brought out in a time where that was possible. So there are I do feel like as much as people want to make sense, but anyway, we'll go into pure profit. So what I did is, there have been a lot of speculation that the marketing budget was this, the marketing budget is that. So what I've done is I've gone on Google and gone on a few other sites, and we basically have the budget of the movie, versus the box office, because these are the two statistics that we can find online that are facts. And this is what I'm going off. Is, you know, we don't know if Superman had a 2 million market in or a 200 million market in. We can speculate all we want, but only people like James Gunn are ever going to have that answer. So I'm not going to speculate. As I say, this video is more to try and put as much facts out there of what I'm interpreting. So Superman 1. Where am I? Okay, so it made hang on, I almost read it in the wrong way. So essentially, Superman 1, the very first Christopher Reeve, was made on a 55 million budget. It made 300 million. Superman 2 was made on 54 million budget, and it made 216.3 million. Superman 3 was made on 39 million budget and made 80.2 million. Don't expect to write these. I can put these up on the screen. The Quest for Peace, number 4, was made on a 17 million budget and made 36.7 million. So this is in the box office to date. So obviously, if these movies are re-released at a later date, that does add to the box office. So you kind of, if Superman's been, even though it made a lot, if it's been released multiple times and made like 50 million here and there, it didn't necessarily make as much. But again, I'm going on facts, so just something to consider. Superman Returns, 223 million. It made 391.1 million. Man of Steel, 225 to 258, they said the budget was. So what I did is I took the midpoints, 241.5 million, and it made 670 million. And then the latest Superman, or Superman Legacy, I don't know why they got rid of that title, 225 million. So more or less the same budget of Man of Steel, give or take, made 616.7 million of recording of this video. So you're like, well, they're the two figures we can say. So first I did is let's take the budget of how much they won at the box office. So granted, these were in the 80s, 2010s, and the 2020s. These are all released in different decades. That's 10. There are a lot of factors considered, but we'll do it anyway. So the one that earned the most money would have been Superman Man of Steel, so 428.5 million. The second movie was 391.7 million, so that's Superman, the latest Superman. The third movie, Superman 1, 245 million. Then we go to Superman Returns, 168 million. Closely behind it, Superman 2 with 162.3 million. Then obviously Superman 3, 41.2 million and 19.7 million for Quest for Peace. So that is, I will put these orders up on screen. So that is the order if you just take budget and profit. If we don't take marketing, because we don't know these stats, that's physically the order there, which I'm sure a lot of people with the recent bashing, it's still really, really high. Yes, Man of Steel made slightly more money. But if people were to rank it, you know, people saying that this isn't profitable, would you then say that this order is correct then? Because obviously that's from what the stats we know and the facts we know, that is what has made the most money, which I'm going to show a lot of people are probably screaming at their screens now going, no, that's not right. That would never be right. I know people have done rankings and this is nowhere near the right order. So what I did then is I used my brain and decided, well, let's look at this a little way. Let's take how much profit it made and how many times the budget it is. So first off, we'll go for the top. So the first movie that earned the most money across its budget. Obviously, this movie has then been out the longest as well and has revisited cinemas. So I don't know how many times, I can't do that calculation because it's not out there, but it's Superman with 5.45 times its budget. So this order, funny enough, kind of is close to where people rank it. So that's the first one. Superman 2, 4 times its budget. Superman Man of Steel, 2.77 times its budget. And the latest Superman, 2.74 its budget. We then go Superman Quest for Peace, 2.15. Superman 3, which is then in order of 2.05. and then Superman Returns 1.75. Again, I see this is a bit more of a closer to what people see, more because the first Superman sits at the top of the multiplier. Again, as I say, it's been re-released. That thing, this fact, obviously there is that fact to consider. It's been out 4 years, and obviously, but I can't give you that fact, so I just go with that. So that's an interesting thing, isn't it? So with this video order, when people say profitability, I don't think we can really use it, because if that's the case, if people are looking at this and people, consider the fact of, we go back to the previous figure, so we take the box office away from the budget of movies and how much of movies they make. So it basically, if they're saying this isn't profitable, so it's not a very good movie, then that's basically saying if a movie is profitable, then it's a really good movie. So I'll stick up the 2025 top 10 movies. I can guarantee you, looking at this list, I haven't seen Zootopia recording list, but there are only 2 out of those 10 movies I think are really good. Jurassic Park, for one, should nowhere near be the top 10. I think it's a 5 or 6. I can't, as I say, I'm getting this when I'm recording this, so obviously the list has changed because Zootopia has just come out. And it's funny stuff, people might go, oh, well, this was an off year or something like that. A lot of people watching these videos will be reviewers of movies like me, and they will have their top 10s. And obviously you've done a top 10 of 2024, you may not have done one of 2025, so I'll put the top 10 movies of 2024, done by cost. If you want to agree that that's the correct top 10, and I'm probably saying on both accounts, in 25 and 24, everyone watching this is probably saying, no, you're right, they're not the top 10 movies. I'm like, well, if that's the case, then I think people should stop using the fact that if a movie is profitable or not based off whatever fictional figures they want to do. Obviously, we can base it off what we know. That is not the case. And for me, and watching this video, one of the highest ranked movies of this year, in my opinion, is a movie called I Swear. As far as I can tell, it hasn't officially been given a cost for a budget. From what I have found online, there are rumors it cost 5 million to make. It made 5.8 million. I can probably guarantee, of after this video, the end of this year, anybody who saw that movie, it will be in their top 10. Almost guaranteed. If you haven't watched it, it won't be in your top 10. I can guarantee most people. I'm not saying everyone, but I'm saying a lot of people. And a movie that then made 0.8 of a million over it, and obviously that, again, we don't know marketing or anything, and we don't know if this 5 million is false. It could be more, less. It won't be seen as a profitable movie, but it would be seen as a great movie. And I think this is where if this generation, we need to get to the fact that all because a movie makes money doesn't make it a good movie. I think I've clearly shown by the top 10 and stuff, and costs and stuff like this, people will disagree with that. So we go into the next one. So it's perfect, realistic portrayal, bloodier, battered, stuff like this. Basically, he's not immune. So yes, so in this Superman, and it kind of goes to this other fact of the human kindness and stuff like that. Superman, he is human within a way, because he has been brought up on Earth. Regardless of any incarnation of Superman it is, unless it's a dark version, like maybe if you want to take Brightburn movie, or if you want to take, like, I think it's Red Sun and a few other ones, Superman becomes who he is because of the family he raises him. Now, anybody who's had any kind of dealt with adoption, with raising children, you know about trauma that kids can get from being detached from their parents, from loss and something like this. And we become who we are by the people around us and how they treat us. And that can vary, as I say, from adopters, normal people, and surrogates and everything else. He's raised by essentially 2 simple people. People didn't like the parents. At the end of the day, they're 2 farmers from Kansas. They're not rocket science. They're not rocket scientists, even not rocket science, rocket scientists. They are grounded down to earth. And that was a very kind of basic portrayal, I would say, in this movie. We didn't get to see more. The main fact is that these care, and the fact they care is the fact their son cares, and the fact why Superman cares about the planet, regardless of what his biological family have. So the fact he's bloody and he's bruised, I then took a step away from this and I was like, right, so why was he bloodied and why was he bruised? So we have Superman essentially fighting a clone of himself in a robotic suit, being governed by one of the smartest people on the planet. Now, obviously, it doesn't say where Lex sits in it. I know in the fictional DC universe, Lex is one of the most intelligent people there. Narcissistic as well, but he's one of the most intelligent people up there. You know, I mean, put yourself in that image. If you were fighting a clone of yourself that then had a super suit that then was being commanded by someone that was a lot smarter than you, would you win? No, you would get the shit kicked out of you, pardon my French, but that happens. Also, the whole point of that beating is to kind of show the human side of Superman. This whole story is Superman overcoming basically overcoming a challenge. And the reason why I kind of use that term, even though I can't pronounce it right, I will come back to that in a later point. You know, he suffers his first defeat. Essentially, his parents are classed as evil. His love of his life decides she doesn't want to be with him. You know, those three factors alone are enough to instill anxiety, you know, and everything else. Even that, you know, the people care about him are criticizing for everything done. He's just trying to help people because he has the power to. He doesn't have to. He could just sit there and not do a thing. But he's chosen to be a good. But everyone's criticizing him, which is probably a more common thing that we find with the internet and criticizing stuff like this. And it's this challenge of him overcoming that and becoming kind of a stronger Superman and understanding, you know, of the love of Lois Lane and that, you know, he cares and that's what he's there for doing. And he will overcome anybody who manipulates that, because essentially the whole story is manipulated from Lex Luthor's point of view. So then we go down to the woke point of view. So James Gunn is an immigrant human kindness. As I say, the whole point of Superman is human kindness. If he wasn't, it'd be Homelander. And if anybody's seen The Boys, Superman killing people, he doesn't do it. One of the pure things, which is funny in this, that people took offense to this, in Man of Steel, he snaps Zod's neck. Now, in most realities of comics, that would never happen. That is so against Superman. Superman is more against not killing than Batman is. But in the Batman films, Batman doesn't kill, but Superman's all right to kill because it's a darker one. And it's like, well, that's not what the characters are there for. You know, if you want darker versions of this, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy the Snyderverse and everything else that comes with it. But the core of the character of how it was created by, funny enough, if you didn't know this, two Jewish immigrants that came to America to flee the war and everything else, that wanted to create a character to represent them, to represent freedom, to give them a better life, what fictional wise would have given them a better life if he existed in real life. So the fact people were upset, and I mean, immigrants and stuff are everywhere. Like, my biological dad is Lithuanian and I haven't seen him since I was 3. If we didn't have it, if the UK didn't have immigration or anything like this, I wouldn't even be here to say this video. So I find that strangest thing as well. You know, and that's how it is. Yes, obviously, but yeah, I just find that really silly, you know, and him not to be kind, like him saving the animals and everything else. That's what Superman would do. When you see him fighting with the Justice Gang, he's the one that's stopping everybody. But obviously, why he gets beaten is because he has these big bad guys in this kind of really big new fictional world. So I'm going back and forth my notes. So yeah, okay. So that's just some bullet points of why I, you know, what it seems weird that people are using these. Let's say like they use the war and stuff like this. Like, war has always happened. It's only because it's maybe more front and center in this day and age that they even compare it to this. And I was like, but you don't really get to see a lot of that. And Superman in any sort of world has always tried to save and stop wars. It's just you don't necessarily see it. But anyway, so why do I think this Superman is a different Superman, and why, you know, and what is my reasoning for that? So this is a little bit of me now taken into what fact. So this is basically, I will go back and recap the movies. So we had Superman 1. Obviously this release, so Superman is Krypton's blown up. He goes to Earth. He's raised by the Kents. His dad dies, works at the Daily Planet, and then he has his adversary, which is Lex Luthor. He defeats Lex Luthor. I know it's a very condensed version. It's just a kind of summary, just to give you. That is essentially the work of the first movie. I can go, Lois gets trapped, dies, and he turns back time by going around the sun. But I'm going to get to that at a later point. So next one, we have the continuation of the first movie. They need a bigger and badder bad guy. They have Zod and his minions. They come, they fight. He decides to sacrifice his humanity in a way and basically defeats Zod. That is Superman 2. Superman 3 gets a little bit of a split personality as he's being corrupted by this supercomputer, faces off a computer and wins in the final one. And then 4 basically battles a genetic creation of himself, kind of an evil He-Man, as I like to look at him. So it's always some sort of adversary. So those first 4 films are essentially the Christopher Reeve legacy that has been born. Right? So that is 1978. I want to say that movie. I think I had the dates here. So 1978, yes, up until 1987. So at that point, from 1987, we had no incarnation of Superman up until Superman Returns, which is 2009. That came along. They decided, or Bryan Singer's, I will carry on what has been created by Christopher Reeve. After 4, he went off to Krypton to search for his planet. He returns, and obviously he has a son, Lois Lane. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. He then fights Lex Luthor to kind of reiterate back to the first movie. You know, he's the kind of the common knowledge, and obviously, again, like the first movie, he uses kryptonite to try and hurt him. Wasn't received that well. I liked Brandon Routh. I thought it had its merits. And then 2009 come and goes. 4 years later, we have Man of Steel. So then we have Krypton explodes. He comes to Earth. He's raised by the Kents. His dad dies. He goes to the Daily Planet. He then fights Zod in this incarnation of it. He snaps his neck, goes on to the rest of the Snyderverse. That is the sum of Man of Steel. And they do preview Supergirl at the back, or a pod that could be Supergirl. That's it. 6th movie. Superman gets defeated, as we've all known, loses more or less everything from the world, tries to find his way to redeem himself, overcomes Lex Luthor with the help of his friends, and Lois defeats Lex. The end. Now, the funniest thing of why I say this is essentially, let's take the latest Superman out. So let's take this movie after this video. So we have the Christopher Reeve movie, the continuation of Christopher Reeve's movie, and then 2 not so good movies that should have done on. So we have Christopher Reeve's version of Superman in what is essentially his world. It's the world of the 70s/80s. There isn't vast technologies. There is no other aliens besides the Zods. The Kryptonians are the only creatures we ever see, and obviously Jor-El and something like that. And it's a very as I would say, common Earth compared to what we use now, or compared to what is in any of the comics. So that's the first 4 movies. I think that's a fair assessment. Regardless of goodness, bad, that is Christopher Reeve's legacy that he's left. So then we go fast forwards, what is it, like 22 years, and then we get the next Superman. The next Superman is essentially a later version of these 4 movies, continuation on his story, kind of continue on his world, kind of have a few themes that have been covered in that. Because obviously, if you just had a Superman that turned up to have a child and you hadn't seen any of the movies, that wouldn't make sense. So, okay, so we've got 5 movies that are kind of following the Christopher Reeve era, and then we have Man of Steel. And I know people are like, no, but Man of Steel doesn't follow the Christopher Reeve story. So I'll rewind a few minutes. So, Superman 1, Krypton explodes, he goes to Earth, he's raised by the Kents, his dad dies, he works at the Daily Bugle, or Daily Planet, Daily Bugle, Spider-Man. He fights Lex. We'll take out Lois dying for now. So that's the first movie. The second movie comes up against Zod and his minions, fights his minions, defeats his minions. That's the first 2, very, very summed up. So let's take away Lex, and then let's have a look at the story. Krypton explodes, raised by the Kents, Father Kent dies, works at the Daily Planet, fights Zod, defeats Zod. And what's the story of Man of Steel? It's exactly that. Essentially, Krypton is expanded and he kills Zod. But essentially, there are a lot of elements. Overall, as a story, very simplistic world. There's no other aliens besides Kryptonians and stuff like this. There's no mention of anything else like this. So that's why I'm saying this is very strange. If you look at the 6 movies, they all kind of have something very in common. Yes, I can add that Lex isn't in there. I moved him out. Yes, I can react that Lois doesn't die. But if you get an overall gist of those movies, Snyder basically took the core plot and just don't get me wrong. Now, Man of Steel, the first half an hour, I love it. Russell Crowe's thing. I'm not slating this movie. I'm just saying there are a lot of similarities of all of these movies of continuation. This Christopher Reeve story. That when we get to this movie, that for once James Gunn trying to start his new universe amongst every other comic movie they've had, which is what 40 or 50 of them. So then goes, actually, let's put Superman in a super world. So this is the start of the universe. So first off, obviously there are interdimensional rifts and stuff like this. So we're already getting into pocket universes and stuff like this. So that could possibly link to other superheroes. You actually meet Supergirl in this, setting up the next movie. She's featured in Red Planet on Red Suns where she goes drinking. So you have stuff like Lobo, you have Mongol, you have it's not Krypton, but it's another planet. All these planets have red suns. You've already opened up the world. You've met the Justice Gang, so you've already met Hawkgirl, so Themyscira potentially. Themyscira? No, that's Wonder Woman's one. What is the? You've got the Hawk home world. I can't remember what it's called. Apologies, more. So you've already got that mentioned. You've met a Green Lantern, so you already know the Green Lanterns exist. So space is opened up there. You've then met this little creature that then grows gigantic in there. You have this kind of interdimensional being that when Clark is in his flat and is talking to Lois, you have them fighting them because these enemies are so out of this world that's why all these people are there. Like a war isn't just someone goes in and takes out the general or something. These are such a big scale. This is why he needs help. This is why he does get defeated. And stuff like this, because he has such big challenges in such a big world that James Gunn is starting. And the fact that it's the first movie and everybody's ripping him apart, I was like, you haven't even let him build on that, really. I know Peacemaker and stuff, and I've not seen Peacemaker. So, yeah, so that's, as I say, that it's something different. But not only is it something different, we will rewind. And the reason I rewind is, also, I feel like the sticking movies on a pedestal is becoming a bit of a too much of a I don't even know how necessarily I explain this video, but yeah, people are relying too much on this. That this is a movie I watched as a kid, and this, you know, I watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles free because obviously we didn't have a lot of money. It was what VHS. I like the Turtles. That's all we could afford, so I watched it over and over again, repeat, 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 repeat. I really like this movie. I know that isn't a great movie. I know it doesn't rank high in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle timeline or anything else. I can understand that, and I can understand the reasons why I put it on that pedestal. But what people have done is Superman has been around for like the 1920s odd. In the 1940s, you got animated shorts. I can guarantee almost everybody alive, you'd have to be 85 odd to have even seen those at the time. 1948, you had the first live action movie, which was a tie in to the TV series. Again, most people who are watching the movies now probably never even saw that. They may have gone back and rewatched it, but they were never experienced to it. 1951, sorry, it's the first live action one. Then 1951 is the trailer to the TV series, which is The Adventures of Superman, which is 1952 to 1958. Again, most people wouldn't be aware it was TV. There was no film. Film was obviously becoming such a big thing. Look, obviously, we got to 1978, and it is the first ever adaptation of Superman. Apart from comics, people would have had no idea who Superman was outside of this. Now, Richard Donner did a really good film of it. I am not contesting it. Do I think it's the best Superman movie? No. I don't think there has been a best Superman movie. For me, I love bits of all the different Superman movies that come, but there's certain stuff that each iteration hasn't never had time to explore because it's been cut too short. That, as I say, like, I do love the first Superman movie, but I'm not seeing it in 15, 20 years or any of those other ones. Man of Steel I've seen a lot more often, but I really only like the first half an hour of Krypton. The rest of it is, yeah, it's all right. It's showy. It is what it is. I'm not the biggest fan of Amy Adams as Lois, you know. I like Crypto and stuff from the new one, and that's, you know, but I have the sense to step back and go, even though I like this movie, I can see it has flaws, and this isn't perfect, and I will go a little bit into this. Apologies, this has been a massive video. But the fact of, you know, kids of that age were brought up on this Superman, they had nothing to compare it to. And as I say, then it goes on to, you have 2, 3, 4, even though 3 and 4 are so bad, people grew up on that. Kids of those age that grew on those movies never grew to an age where Lois and Clark was on TV. All of those people were too old and went into jobs. So they have this Christopher Reeve sitting on a pedestal. He is the most amazing Superman ever. I'm afraid to say, and I know I'm going to get a lot of grief, that is not the case. He is the first of what he's done, and it was a good movie, and because of that, it does sit up there. But if you cannot step back and understand of what goes into that and do a fair comparison of other movies, and I'm not saying this is a better movie than this, I'm just saying you need to be a little bit more realistic than going, oh, well, he's not Christopher Reeve. Right. It's a different story. It's a different world. Yes, he gets beat up by out-of-the-world alien and clones of him. Superman 1, he gets a necklace put on him, and a human secretary has to save him from a swimming pool. If you're going to compare this one to that, you have to bring that one to this era. And if Superman 1 was released recently, people would not go, oh, it's great, you know, or he flew backwards around the world to turn back time. Does that mean if I reverse the car, I go back in time as well? You know, there are certain logics in there. If you're going to compare the future to what is the past that you have on a pedestal, you have to then do the same. And there are certain bits like Lois in the later movie jumping out of windows and stuff. How absurd is that in real life? Somebody doing that, you know, bit of a kind of bunny boiler, so to speak. But everybody seems to forget that. Everybody's just like, well, no, he is, you know, he's not Christopher Reeve and stuff like this. So I go a little bit backwards, and then I'm going to finish this video off, because apologies if you stayed with it. I do appreciate it. So this has been building for months and months and months. This video, I've been collecting stuff. So then I went on to IMDb, because it's been a few times. So like, people leave reviews. These should all be like customers and viewers and stuff like this, of the ranking of their ones. So if we actually have the ranking of all the films done by IMDb's rating, number 1 would be Superman, the original movie. Number 2 would be a tie between Man of Steel and Superman Legacy, or whatever you want to call him. So that's joint 2. Then 4th would be Superman 2, 6.8. Sorry, I didn't do the rank. So 7.4 for Superman 1. Man of Steel and the new Superman is 7.1. 6.8 for Superman 2. Returns is 6.1. Superman 3 is 5, and Superman 4 is 3.8. You then go a little bit different. Maybe you don't follow IMDb. So I switched it to Rotten Tomatoes, because that's the big thing that everyone uses. So they have 2 scores. So they have the tomato meter, which is the critics' review, and then the audience, which is the popcorn review. So if we go by the critics' review, Superman 1 and Superman 2 are joint top. The critics both think they are both by far the best movie. The second one is the latest Superman. The 4th one, done by critics, is Superman Returns. Number 5 is Man of Steel. Now, this is not me, as I say, this is critics and this is facts. Superman 6 is 6th is Superman 3, and 7 is Superman 4. If you go by their audience ratings, number 1 is this Superman with a 90% score. 2 is Superman 1. 3 is Superman 2. 4 is Man of Steel. 5 is Returns. 6 is Superman 3, and then we have Superman 4, which is the final one. Doesn't have a good rating. So we get into my finale. So yeah, so as I said, this is, thank you very much for sticking along this video. So I am not saying this is the most amazing movie. I'm just feeling, I think this may, for some reason, this movie gets a lot more harsh. And it could be because there is so many other movies and they're comparing and stuff like this, and stuff like this. Again, with James Gunn, why not give him 2 or 3 movies before you start bashing him? I don't see the point of going, well, I don't like the first one, I don't like this, and it's not Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve is not the perfect Superman. Christopher Reeve was the first portrayal, a very good portrayal of Superman live action. Now, me as a 2-year-old, I am told that I used to jump on the back of the sofa and pretend and fly. So he influenced me, and I'm not debating that he is a good. But people putting him on a pedestal, I feel, is a little bit wrong. And the reason of why I say about this is, it's funny because when you watch behind the scenes stuff of this latest Superman, now Superman's youngest son, real life Christopher Reeve's son, is in this, and he is friends with Christopher Cornsweet, and they do an interview. And I will quickly go to that of going, obviously, you know, and you see James Gunn as well with the audience, and all the different incarnations, he understands that, and he tries to do his own spin because he has such a bigger knowledge than I think a lot of directors have, which is why this is such a different movie in a different universe, because he's world building. But going back to the one, regardless of, yes, there could be coercion, yes, they're kind of advertising and try and film. The one thing his son mentions, which you can find in the documentary, which you can find in there, is Christopher Reeve's goal was overcoming adversity. Essentially, it's what he did in his real life when he had the horse accident, when he founded his charity. He says it, you know, he goes across it. Basically, there's all these challenges, and he still wanted to walk, he wanted to learn. And that is something that I think should be admired. But the funniest thing ever is that this new movie, that is the pure goal of it, of him having his first defeat, his girlfriend breaking up with him, his parents wanted him to be an evil dictator, the world hates him. He has to overcome all that and to follow essentially what is the moniker of Christopher Reeve. And people go, no, I don't like this, I don't, you know, it's nothing to do with it. Actually, when you break it down to that, and when you realise that, if people would actually be a bit open to it, you would realise that there is a lot more to this Superman. And I'm not saying that this isn't pure Superman. The theme the theme music is used in there. The title emphasizes the whole Superman text of what has been used before. He brings back the trunks that have been used before. He fights an evil bad guy with a skinny woman, a powerful skinny woman, and a beefed up hench guy. There are more, if you look, there are more things that do relate to the earlier movies. This is not me saying this is most original, it's nothing like ones. I agree that there are points there that they've taken and that they honour and that want to continue memories of Christopher Reeve. But I think understanding that it takes the core element but wants to do its own thing and people hate for that, I feel is a little wrong. As I say, this movie seems to be, as I say, when I Googled it, when you start to type like the most hated movie or this automatically comes up from Google. This is what people are searching. And I have no idea that why they do it unless, as I say, because they put it on a pedestal and stuff like this. As I say, I don't agree with that. That's just me. That's my opinion. Thank you very much for all that have come along to this big saying. It's a big video. As I say, I had a lot to talk about. This has been boiling in me because people just go in Christopher Reeve's brilliant and stuff like this when, James Gunn takes the emphasis to do something different, but at least honours what is essentially the core Christopher Reeve moment. Who, if you're going to love Christopher Reeve, if you're going to love the portrayal of Christopher Reeve, you have to love the actor himself because he did that. But anyway, I've been Chris from Cypher Sigma Screen Time. This has been a massive video, so I appreciate anybody who gets to the end of it. Again, I'm sure people aren't going to be happy with my opinion. I'm sure people are going to say I'm wrong. Most of what I have had in here is fact. It is fact that I found from the internet, from multiple sites. It is reviews and that from people on the internet. I'm not pointing at one finger. I'm not pointing at a group of fingers. I have just wanted to understand what people's opinions are and used facts and a little bit of my own opinions to kind of compare that. But anyway, again, as I say, thanks for watching. I'll definitely see you in the next one.